Hi, how are you today? And welcome to Time with Tina. I am glad to be able to talk to you. It's been a couple of days and I really haven't set up my video to do this week. Today I've been discouraged um, about some things, whether I wanted to continue doing these videos or not. But I decided to continue to do them because I believe that's what God wants me to do. And, you know, as Christians, we're here to do what the Lord wants us to do. So I'm back to do another video with you. So let me put on my glasses. I should just keep them on when I'm doing this. I don't know why I don't just keep them on when I'm doing this, but I take them off because actually they're for reading most of the time, but looking at into the camera, I just see everything more clearly. But enough about my bad eye problems. I am here to talk to you about Mary Magdalene, and this is one of my profile videos I'm doing about people in the Bible, and I did one on Jesus, and I'll probably do one on other people in the Bible. I don't want to call them characters because they're real people, but they are lessons. They are people who teaches us a great deal about things. And Mary Magdalene is one of those people who the public knows, even non-Christians know Mary Magdalene, but her story is not of correct. I don't know where people got this idea about Mary Magdalene, and that is what we're here to do. We're here to clear up some stories about Mary Magdalene that may have not been true. So we know Mary Magdalene's story begins in Luke 8. Luke 8, chapter 1, verse 3. And I will go there because, look, I have my Bible. I don't want to say anything to you that is not true. So I have my Bible here, and I will begin reading in Luke 8. What did I say? Yeah, Luke 8. And actually, Mary's stories start where the parable of the sower is. If you have a Bible that has, everything kind of organized so you can understand it better. Her story starts in Luke 8, but it goes down. If you read the parable of the sower, it goes down in verse 1. Well, let's just read the whole thing. After this, Jesus traveled about from one town and village to another, proclaiming in the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and disease. Mary, called Magdalene, from from whom 7 demons had came out of. Joanne, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, Suzanne, and many other. These women were helping to support them out of their own means. Wow. So we know about the 12 disciples that were with Jesus. They've written most of these books in the New Testament, but they don't really talk much about the women. And Mary Magdalene and Jesus' mother Mary are probably the two women they talk mostly about in the New Testament. But we see here that Joanne is this woman named Joanne, wife of Cubit, manager of Herod's household. This is Herod, and if anybody knows Herod, he was not a nice man. But she was there. She was there, and someone named Suzanne was there. I wish the Bible would kind of, because there's not much talk about women in the New Testament. We know about Mary and Martha, the two sisters, and mother of Jesus, and But a lot of women aren't talked about in the Bible, but we see that these women also traveled with the disciples. So it wasn't just the 12 men traveling with Jesus, it was also women traveling with him as well. And Mary Magdalene was one of those women that were traveling with Jesus. Some would consider Mary to be the 13th disciples. That is how much involved with Jesus's life, with Jesus's journey on this earth that she was. She could have been number 13, but they don't mention her as number 13, but they do mention her often because she is a very important woman in the Bible. It says that Jesus had drove out seven spirits from her, demon spirits, matter of fact. And and the number one story I used to hear about Mary Magdalene, which now we read is not true, is that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. And when you think about it, where did that idea come from? It says nothing about her being a prostitute here. Nothing at all being a prostitute. And I doubt any man would want to get near her because she had these seven demons in her. People always might have just thought she was crazy. So I doubt if any man wanted to be near her. It doesn't say anything about her being married, you know. So where do people get this idea of her being a prostitute? I don't know. But that has been the story of Mary Magdalene for a long time, that she was this prostitute. And you see it in film. I remember watching Sister Act, one of my favorite movies. I love Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg. And I remember that scene where they was getting ready to sing for the first time. The new choir was getting ready to sing. And the priest who was doing the sermon, he was talking about Mary Magdalene, and he referenced her to be a prostitute. And that was the first time I was like, wait a minute, that's not Mary's story. Let me go back and read this because I don't recall Mary being a prostitute. But yeah, he referred to, and there was other people referred to as a prostitute as well, and that was her label. She was a prostitute that Jesus came and got her out of the prostitution, and she was devoted. But that's not her story. Mary had something far worse happening to her, and that she had seven demons in her that Jesus drove out of and healed this woman. And you kidding me? Mary was so grateful for that. She was so grateful for Jesus. She devoted her life to him. She said, enough of this world. I'm following this man who healed me. Everyone else was afraid of me. Everyone else had nothing wanted to do with me. I had no husband. No, I have no children. I have no life. Who knows how long she's had this problem with having these seven demons in her. But all you know is that when a person has seven demons, well, they just think they're crazy. They don't want to have anything to do with them. But Jesus healed her, and she completely was devoted to him after that. That is something you should know about Mary. There's a lot of things to know about Mary, but one of the things you need to know about her is she was a grateful woman. All I see about Mary's story was she was grateful. And when you're grateful, she devoted her whole life to God, to Jesus, the God, well, to God and Jesus, but she devoted her whole life to Jesus because out of just simply gratitude, she was grateful. He took those seven demons out of her and she devoted her whole life. Now, there's been many stories. There have even been movies made about Mary Magdalene, but of course, movies don't always tell the truth. They dramatize a lot of things. And especially when it comes to the Bible has been told a lot of times. And sometimes they looked into the Bible and picked out something and said, okay, we're going to put this in the movie. But other times they're totally made up. And, the movie The Chosen, I avoided watching that movie. I heard some talk of it, but I decided to watch it now that it's on, what is it? It's on one of the cable channels. So I decided to watch a couple of episodes. And they do have the part where Mary meets Jesus. And I was like, okay, at least they got that right. She was possessed with seven demons in the movie. But a lot of other movies have her as a prostitute, which is an untrue story of Mary. And I want to let you know it's untrue. That she was never a prostitute, was intended to be a prostitute. That was never her story. She was a grateful woman who had these seven demons in her, and Jesus drove them out of her. She became a devoted follower of Jesus. She was almost as devoted as the 12 disciples. And one thing you learned from her story is that she was devoted till the end, because Mary was at the cross when Jesus died. And we look at her story. Let me find it. It's in Mark 15. Some women, Mark 15, verse, where am I? In verse 40. Some women were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph, and Salmon. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who had came up with him to Jerusalem were also there. It says many other women. It doesn't talk much about the women so much. But we get a glimpse that when Jesus was going from place to place with his disciples, there were women among them. And Mary was the predominant woman who was among these women. She was the one that the Bible chose to premiere because I think her story resonates to the devotion of Jesus and her gratitude for what he's done. Now, it doesn't say much about these other women. We don't know what Jesus did in their lives. They could have just heard his message and just decided to follow him. We don't know. Because the Bible doesn't talk much about these women, but we know why Mary is following him because Jesus saved her from herself, saved her from seven demons. And she was just grateful to him and devoted her life to him. And that is what we learned about Mary, you know, because she was there when Jesus died on the cross. The disciples weren't there. And she was also there in her burial, which I will get to later, but she was there too. She was always there. Even after Jesus died, she still was devoted to him when many other people weren't devoted, even his disciples. You got one of his disciples betraying him, one of his disciples denying him, you know, and the others just scattered. They just scattered. After Jesus died, they just scattered. And there was nothing but women at the cross when he died. That's very interesting, isn't it? When you think about it, that's very interesting. And that's a testament to women, you know, and but they were just as devoted as Jesus was. I mean, they were just devoted as Jesus was. They were just devoted as his 12 disciples were, and they hung around when the 12 men weren't there. Another thing we should know about Mary is because, like I said, there's been documentaries done about Mary. There's been talk of Mary in movies. And they seem to get it wrong. And they definitely got this wrong when they said that Mary and Jesus could have possibly been in an intimate relationship, which is totally unfounded, untrue. I mean, Jesus at times referred to his disciples and people as children. Jesus saw his disciples as children. He also called them brothers at times. He said they were his brothers, and the women were probably his sisters. There was never any hint that Jesus would be intimate with his followers. No, that is not the kind of person that Jesus was. And we have to understand this because remember, Jesus was a human, but he was also God as well. He was God and he was human. And I think the people trying to say that him and Mary Magdalene was in this intimate, they just trying to humanize Jesus too much. When they say that. And he was human. He lived among us as human, but he was also God. He was also King of Kings. You know, a king might mess around with his servant, but Jesus was the king of those kings. One day all these kings living in this world will have to stand before Jesus and bow down to him. Nobody on this earth would bow down to a king or a queen, but they will have to bow down to Jesus because he is the king over all of them. Amazing, isn't it? I would love to see that day. but but I just want to let you know these are the true stories of Mary Magdalene. And in order to find any truth to anyone, you have to go to the Bible. Don't listen to what somebody says, what your pastor says, what the minister says, what the movie says. Read the Bible if you want to know the truth of anything. Because movies can get it wrong, people can get it wrong. If nobody's reading the Bible, anyone can get those stories wrong about people in the Bible. As I do my research and study about these characters, these people, these lessons I'm presenting to you, I also learn myself new things about the Bible and things. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing this, because I get to learn myself, something I didn't know. And I've been studying the Bible for 30 years. That's another story. But yeah, I was 19 years old when I made the decision that I wanted to follow Jesus for the rest of my life. 19 years old, studied the Bible, made a decision to get baptized, got baptized. And even when you get baptized, you still don't know what you're getting into when you become a Christian. If you are seriously devoted, it is not the easiest life to live, but it's the best life to live. It is the best life. And you will undergo some of the things some of these disciples, which right now, as I told you in some of my other videos, I am still undergoing severe persecution in ways that are, it's not by anyone in particular, but I just know that I'm in this spiritual war right now because of the changes that I'm trying to make in my life. And I'm being in a spiritual warfare for those changes not to happen. And it has attacked every facet of my life. You will not believe. But to tell you that story is another time. But you can't tell by the smile on my face that I'm going through anything. But really, yeah, I'm going through many things. But when I think of Mary, you see, one of the things is when I hold off doing this because of these things I'm going through, one of the things I've learned about Mary through doing research about her is just how grateful she was. That's what I learned about her. Mary is a devoted follower. That's what we learned about her. But to see now, to learn that she was just a grateful woman who just decided to devote our lives. And I think the lesson from her life is that, God has saved us from a lot of things. He has. You may not even know it because there are spiritual wars going on around us for our souls, for our lives. Each and every one of us in the spiritual war is among God's people, mostly. There's a war going around right now for me, and to save my soul, well, not to save it because I'm already saved, but to get me to doubt God, to fear God, to not believe He loves me, to believe that He has not has any plans for me. And that's that's part of the war. Getting people to fall away from God and not trust Him can be a war. And He will use any method. The method might not be the same for anyone. You know, the method might be different, but it draws off of what you already weaken, which Satan knows. Got this fly on my head. It comes from the weakness you already have. And we all have different weaknesses, but that is what He used. And He's using that with me. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting along. I'm still here doing what I need to do, praying, hoping, and I pray that you're praying for me as well. But I'm still in the race, and I'm still learning something from what I'm teaching you. Is that this is what I've learned from Mary, is that I have to be grateful, we have to be grateful for God taking us out of that life we were living, because true, we were very blind in that life. We had the blinders over us, didn't think anything we were doing was leading us straight to hell, because people don't think about hell. They don't think about dying. Especially when you're young, you don't think about dying when you're young. You just think about living your life, living it up, doing all you can in your life. And you don't think about dying. And that's why you know, we I believe we are the most sinful when we're in our early lives, teenage years, 20s, 30s. We start realizing, okay, I need to change my life. This life is not going well for me. And some people, they change it in their 20s or even when they're teenagers. But because we're still growing, we're still learning. When I became a Christian at 19, I was still very young. I did not have that side of my brain yet, was not still developed, that knew right or wrong. But I made that decision to follow Jesus. And I can honestly say that over time, and only over time, that I began to understand that decision that I make to follow the Lord. You don't understand it at first because you're happy just to be saved, and you're happy just to be saved, but you don't understand that life yet until you get way older, until you actually live it, and it's and that's when you start to see, wow, and that you're a Christian when you're kind of going through some of the things the disciples went through, or some of the members. No, nobody's persecuting me, or like that. Nobody's going to kill me because I'm a Christian, although there are countries where that is happening, where you can literally be killed for being a Christian. But no, that's not the kind of things that have happened to me. But we are in a spiritual war. Anyone that becomes a Christian, or they're in this spiritual war, because Satan becomes our enemy. So he's prowling around you all the time. And that's where we have to remember what the Bible says. And that's when we have to really be in our Bibles around that time. So Mary, at the end, After Jesus died on the cross and he was buried in the tomb, we take Mary's story till that end. As I said, she was devoted till the end, grateful till the end. And that is why I believe Jesus allowed it to be Mary, the first one that sees him alive. It says in John 20, Jesus appeared to Mary. 11. John 20:11. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white, seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head, the other at the foot. And they continued to say, "Oh, woman, why are you crying? They have taken my Lord," she says. And she just wants him back. And there was another man there. She didn't see him. But he asks her, "Why are you crying?" "Who are you looking for?" he said. She thinks that it's not Jesus because he probably looks different now. You see, Jesus was a human, but he's probably looked entirely differently because he's God now. He probably looks entirely different to her. So, thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, you have carried him away. Tell me where you have put him, and I will get him back." And Jesus simply says to her, "Mary." And that's when she realized that it was Jesus. And Jesus revealed to her before the disciples, before anyone. I think he did that because of her devotion to him, because she was grateful to him to the end, and it must have broke her heart to know that he died, to see him die. It must have broke her heart. But now she is happy. He wanted to make that woman happy, so he said, "I'm going to reveal myself to you." And that's what he did. And she went back and told the disciples, and, because they were all scattered around, wandering around, and she went and told them. And the rest is history. Jesus rose. But it was Mary he revealed himself to first. And if you learn, like I said, if you learn anything from Mary's story, yes, it is her devotion. No, she was not a prostitute. No, her and Jesus was not intimate. They didn't have an intimate relationship. But another thing you should know about Mary is her gratitude for Jesus healing her. Jesus healed her. He changed her life forever. And she was just grateful. And I think that's how we all need to be. Grateful we're not living in the dark, because some of us were living in the dark. We were just living it up like crazy and being clueless to where it could lead us to. And, you know, now we can devote our lives to Him out of gratitude. And I have to say, people, that even though I'm going through this hard time now, it's been a hard year, I can honestly say that I still end up getting the things I need. Things just come out of the blue. I'm not a miracle person, but there has been times in my Christian life where you just know that this is from God. You just know it. Nobody has to tell you anything. You know it came from God because you know. And there are times where you don't, you've prayed to God, you've had conversation with God that nobody knows you've had these talks. And when God does something out of that conversation, shows you something or gives you something out of those conversations, you know that He was listening and He answered you. And He says, "Here." And that is when you know you have a relationship with God, because it's only you know. You know and God knows. Nobody else knows this. And that is how you know that your relationship with God is real. The Bible's real. Mary is real. Her story is real. Everything is real. So I hope you learned something about Mary Magdalene. A little bit of something. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I hope you get away with something about Mary and her life. And I will see you next time. I'm glad you spent time with me. Till next time, bye.